We're going to have some after lunch, relaxed, laid back fun today. First of all, I am Pauline. Hello. Thank you for joining. I'm a senior backend developer in PHP. I talk a lot, mostly about Git. Not today though, but usually when I'm talking about Git. So if you want to know anything about Git, you can always approach me as well. I work at DevCorp in Amsterdam, so here. I like, among other things, hip-hop, cocktails, the internet, animals, which is why I have one cat. I also have 3 plants, dying. And I was attacked by a baboon once, but that's a story for another time. So, before I continue, actually, who does not know what a choose-your-own-adventure story is? Okay, so there's maybe 1 or 2. So most of you know what a maybe a little more. Most of you know what a choose-your-own-adventure story is, but for those who don't know, a choose-your-own-adventure story is just like a normal story, except you get to make decisions, and based on those decisions, the story takes different turns. So I don't know if you've played Bandersnatch, for instance. That's like a modern take on a choose-your-own-adventure story. It's a Netflix episode that's interactive. It's a bit like that. So we're going to do that. I'm going to tell you a story, and in that story, you as the audience get to make certain decisions. And based on the decisions that you make, the story has different endings. So that being said, let's go to the premise of the story. So you're a consultant. You're usually hired to help teams become better, become more performant, to help businesses, software teams scale up. And in this particular case, you've been hired by a company called DevCorp. And DevCorp, it's a very generic name with a nondescript product. So DevCorp started out as a startup about 4 years ago, but now they have investors that have demands. So you're getting funding, but in order to continue that funding, they have certain requirements, so growth requirements in terms of your team, in terms of your scalability and your profitability. So they've called you in to help them become more mature in that sense. So it's your first day at DevCorp. You enter the lobby.
Can we choose?
What's that?
Can we choose not to enter?
No, some parts are set in stone, I'm sorry, just like in Bandersnatch. Okay, so you enter the lobby, and a lady walks up to you, and she's like, "Welcome, so happy you're here. We've been waiting for you. What's your name?" So obviously, this is a less than critical decision you get to make, but this is just to test out, and to kind of get a feel for how you get to make decisions. So option 1 is Ashton Kutcher, and option 2 is Princess Peach. And the way we're going to vote is you go to menti.com. I'm sure many of you are familiar with menti.com. And you punch in the code, so that's 219461. And every time there's a decision, I'm going to give you about, this time's a bit longer obviously, but every time you get to make a decision, I'm going to give you about 15 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, and whoever hasn't voted before that time, tough luck, I guess. Okay, so this is going pretty well. So remember, option 1 is Ashton Kutcher, and option 2 is Princess Peach. All right, 69 is a good, more. I had like 69, let's go. Okay.
420.
Let's go. Yeah, 420, that's going to be tough. Do you have separate devices? All right, so let's see what the winner is. Option 2, all right, so you extend your hand, you shake her hand, and you say, "My name is Princess Peach. Thank you for having me." And she says, "Princess Peach, we're so glad to have you. My name is Lisa, and I'm a product manager at DevCorp, and actually I'm the product manager for your team, because currently we only have one small dev team so far. So I'm the product manager. You'll be working with that team, and there will be 3 developers in that team. So if you just follow me inside, we can get you introduced to the 3 developers on our team. So you follow her inside, and you decide that a good start to get familiar with the team is to do one-on-ones. So you talk to each of them separately and try to kind of get to know them and see what they're about. So the first developer, so there's 3 developers on the current team. One of them is called Youssef, another one is called Naomi, and the last one is called Tom. So you talk to Youssef first. So this is Youssef, and Youssef is kind of like the wizard. He's been there since DevCorp's inception, so he has a lot of trust from upper management as well, because he was there at the beginning. He was the sole developer. He set up all the infrastructure, got the whole business up and running, built the first couple of features really, really fast, obviously, so they could start churning out products. So yeah, he's really got that trust from management. But there's one problem with him. His major problem is that his bus factor is through the roof. And if you haven't heard of a bus factor is basically the damage it would cause your company if one person were to get hit by a bus. So if Youssef were to get hit by a bus, DevCorp tomorrow would be screwed, pretty much. Because all of his knowledge about the infrastructure and the code base, everything that he initially set up, is all in his head and in nobody else's head. Unfortunately, he doesn't really find the time to contribute to planned work, because he's usually fighting fires other people can't put out, because he's the only one that has access to certain things or knowledge about certain things. And his catchphrase is to end each sentence with, obviously. Because to him, everything is obvious. And he sometimes forgets that to everyone else, everything might not be so obvious. All right, next up is Naomi. Naomi is the up-and-comer. So she's a junior. She started 2 years ago as an intern, but she hasn't really developed ever since, because she's basically just been fixing bugs, and she hasn't really, they haven't really invested in her personal development. You know, she enjoys fixing the bugs because she gets to poke around and get to know the code base and solve puzzles, so she likes doing that, but she hasn't really progressed in terms of personal development because of that. Because of fixing the bugs, though, she's also developed a keen understanding of the domain and the product internals. So that's at least some knowledge that she has that other people might not have. And lastly, she's a fast learner with strong opinions. And her catchphrase is, "I'm out of stuff to do." So she will wait for work, for someone to put work on her plate, and then she'll do the tasks, and then she'll wait for some more work to go her way. And you have a feeling that if you don't keep challenging her, she might get a little bit bored. So lastly, the last developer is called Tom. Tom is the heavyweight. He's a recent hire, so we hired him about 4 months ago. He has many, many years of experience. He is a heavyweight in the scene specifically. So he's a conference organizer. He knows a lot of people. He knows most of the people behind the open source software that DevCorp uses, which can really come in handy, because anytime there's a problem or there's questions about a library that we're using, he can just poke the right people and get them involved to really quickly fix things. So that's nice. However, his catchphrase is a little problematic. It's, "I never get anything done around here." And he says that's the case because he feels like his talents are kind of going to waste. He has all this experience and all this knowledge, but because Youssef has so much trust from upper management and is kind of the guardian to the entire infrastructure and the code base, he feels like he can't really maneuver freely enough to really have his talents be useful to the company. All right, so the first day, the rest of the first day is filled with meetings and new impressions and people explaining the product to you and meeting all the different departments. And obviously, you're pretty tired after that day. The development floor seems relatively quiet, but you keep hearing Tom grumble from time to time. So you kind of wonder what the problem is, but you haven't been able to figure it out yet. You haven't found the time. So you go home that day. And after a good night's sleep, you've kind of mulled it over, and you return to the office, and you still hear Tom grumbling. "I never get anything done around here," he says. And you think, maybe it's a good time to talk to him and see what's up. So you go talk to him, And he says, our CI pipeline is so unstable. This is really slowing us down. So he says that not only does the pipeline take half an hour to run, but 9 out of 10 times it actually fails, so you have to constantly rerun it. And it just randomly fails. Nobody knows what's up. So you ask him, what can we do to fix this issue? Because obviously this is a real bottleneck to development. If everyone's building features, but nobody can deploy for hours, then obviously we're not moving at the speed that we'd like to. And he says, well, you should probably ask Youssef. He set all of this up. He has access to everything. He knows how this works. And also, I don't really have much time because Lisa's constantly on my back because we're not moving fast enough. So you talk to Youssef. And Youssef kind of like, you approach his desk and he kind of wakes up. Like he was clearly in the zone and you startled him a little bit. So he takes off his headphones and he looks at you and he says, look, Princess Peach, I really don't have the time right now. I've got requests coming in from all over. I've got Naomi's dev box that is broken, so she can't work, which is a blocker, so I have to help her first. And then Lisa has this stakeholder presentation in about half an hour and she needs this export of order data or something, like this report that she has to present to the stakeholders in half an hour, so it's very, very urgent. So you think for a little while, and you think, well, that might be the case, but I think it's more important for everyone to be able to move forward. Or you could say, okay, I understand that your tasks that you have right now are really urgent, so I want you to do that first. Now, before we cast another vote, I would just like to point out that this is not a quiz, it's a story. So you don't necessarily have to vote for what you think is the right thing to do. You could also just do what you want to do and watch the world burn, basically. So let's go to the next thing. So option 1 is to press him to prioritize the pipeline. And option 2 is let him do his other tasks first. Okay, we're hearing some burn. All right. That's a pretty good amount. Oh, even better. So let's see. Okay, very vanilla of you. Not judging, not judging. So you say, okay, what's that?
It's also letting him burn.
It's letting him burn. It's a bit of a burn to him, I guess. Probably deserves it. All right, so basically you overrule what he says. You're like, I understand, I appreciate that those tasks that you have might seem urgent, but also they're urgent to one single person every time. You know, this is blocking the entire development floor, so I want you to prioritize the pipeline over your other tasks. So he sets out and does that. Then Lisa comes up to you, obviously, and complains. She says, Princess Peach, did you take Youssef off that order data export I asked him to do? Because that was really important. I don't know if he told you, but I have a stakeholder presentation. They're waiting for these numbers, and now I don't have anything to show them. And you basically explain your decision. So you say that although you appreciate that the urgency of her request, it's not as urgent as keeping pushing this pipeline forward and forward and forward, because every time you push it forward, it adds hours to your development time. So, you know, the data you might be showing to the stakeholders might be there, but also the data is not very good because you're not delivering any value at a decent enough pace. So that is more important also for her. It's in her best interest as well. So you've explained your decision. And she sighs. She sighs and she goes, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. I can see how that will benefit us in the long run as well. So I'll just tell them that we had to prioritize other work, and I'll send them the report later. And you nod in agreement and you tell her, like, look, if there's any more, if you have these kinds of requests more often, she says, yes, I do. We can also work on something and build an internal feature for you to be able to do these reports by yourself, so you don't have to bug development for it, and you're not dependent on them. So we can just prioritize that as planned work and service you in that sense. And she says, okay, that sounds good. And then she starts to walk away, and she turns around and she says, wait, if we're going to start working on internal features as well as customer-facing features, does it make sense to maybe hire another team member to kind of alleviate that pressure? And so you have two options again. First I have to change this slide to the next thing before you can vote, just FYI. So your first option, you kind of think about it and you say, you know what, that could speed up our work a little bit to just have one more pair of hands. Or you say, you know what, let's just keep this team stable and try to kind of get this team dynamic to a healthy place before we start adding other people to the mix. So, go ahead and vote. So, oh yeah, just a reminder, option 1 is agree and hire someone. Option 2 is don't hire someone. I keep hearing burn coming from this general area. It's interesting.
It's behind me.
Sure.
I would run if there's fire behind me.
Yeah, it sounds suspicious, right? All right, let's show the winner. Option 2. No. All right, so you think, you know what, we have a small team, that's true, but there's also a lot to improve upon first. So let's just try and do that first before adding another element to the team. So you disagree and you say, nah, we'll be good. We just need to make our processes a bit better. And then you go check on Naomi because her dev box was broken, right? So she couldn't work. And it turns out she's been Stack Overflowing and poking around, and after about an hour, she's figured out how to do it herself. So you smile, you're proud, and you go about your day. All right, so in the following weeks, the team is shipping more and stressing out less because of the pipeline that was fixed. The team prioritized and delivered that reporting tool, so not only is the pipeline more stable and people can actually deploy stuff, there's also less impromptu requests coming in from Lisa because she's now no longer dependent on the development team and she can do her own stuff. All right. You join a refinement session. So Lisa comes up with something that's on the top of the backlog, and she says, so there's a demand for a customer loyalty system. So a loyalty system for users to enroll into, and then they collect points, and they get rewards after a certain amount of points. And she says there's this demand because there's a marketing campaign coming up. It's this big marketing campaign aimed to attract new users. So she says, ideally, we would launch this loyalty system together with this marketing campaign so that the new users that we actually get in, we actually retain as well through this loyalty system. And then Naomi thinks for a while and she says, ooh, I think I actually read about a tool that does that. And she goes to typing. She goes to the website of the tool that she had in mind, and she turns over her laptop to show Tom. And he looks at the requirements in the story, and he looks at the functionality and the pricing and all that. And he says, okay, so this tool is a little pricey, but it does look like it's exactly what we need. So he says, thank you, Naomi, for contributing that. Let's just try and go with that. But then he says, I do think it might be a good idea to abstract the third-party tool away from our own software in order to not couple it too much. And he quickly sketches out a diagram, and he kind of explains, like, okay, so here's this third-party library. Here's our code base. If we just directly start using this third-party library in our code base everywhere, then let's say our requirements change, or for some reason we want to swap this library out for something else, maybe something homegrown, maybe some other third-party library, then we have to replace all these usages in our code base, and it will take a much longer time. Whereas if we just create an interface, our own interface in our own code base, and in the implementation of that we use our third-party library, then if we ever choose to swap it out with someone else, we can just make a new implementation with whatever we choose to swap it with, and we would only have to replace that and not all of the occurrences. So that might, save us a lot of time. And then Youssef sighs and like kind of, ugh. Again with the unnecessary complexity. You're always over-engineering stuff. Like, who's to say we're ever going to swap this out for anything else? You're already thinking of this perfect solution, whereas we don't. The chances are that we're never going to change it. So why would we add this unnecessary complexity to our code base? It's also going to just give us a bit more overhead on development time. So why would we do this? So you consider both of the options. And you think, well, you know what? Tom's solution does sound a little more future-proof, and that does seem like what I set out to do here. Or you agree with Youssef and you think, you know what? We might not ever need this. Let's not over-engineer. So option 1 is go with Tom's suggestion. Option 2 is go with Youssef's suggestion. I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it. Kind of looking out over there as well. Like, who is it? Who is it? All right. I prefer to wait for an uneven number, just in case. I had that during the dry run, but okay, whatever. The odds are that it's not even, so. Hey, there is a winner. You really do want to see the world burn. All right, so you think, you know what, my job here is to ensure that we have a future-proof code base, that we're scalable, and that we can move quickly. So I'm going to go with Tom's solution. So Tom looks pretty smug. You can tell, like, he tries to hide it, but he's like, I've won this battle. There's clearly some tension between Youssef and Tom sometimes. And then you think about it, you know what, this is like a completely new library that we're introducing. We're doing some interesting architectural design decisions, so this might be a good opportunity for Naomi to be more involved in the actual software design portion of things instead of just fixing all the bugs. So Tom agrees and he says, maybe Naomi and I should pair on this one. And Lisa, having felt a lot less of the pressure from the business lately because of the increased velocity, she says, it does sound like a good learning opportunity. So you think about it and you either say, yeah, I think you should pair on this, or you say, don't pair. This feature is high priority. We need to get it live ASAP before that marketing campaign is launched. I have a feeling it's going to be very vanilla again. I'm not trying to influence anyone. So option one is pair. Option 2 is don't pair.
Tom is the guy who never gets things done.
Yeah, Tom is like the heavyweight. Do you also remember why he doesn't get things done? Because he's a whiny little. Okay, that's not really where I was going with that, but okay.
He's running away from the fire.
Yeah, he's just a wimp.
Or he spends his time
Scared.
chatting with open source people.
Oh yeah. Okay, well, that's actually pretty likely. All right, let's show the winner. Yo. Surprise, surprise. So you say, you know what, Naomi, I think this would be good for you. You should pair on this. And she gets excited. She goes, on it. And she rolls her desk chair over to Tom's desk, and they start drawing diagrams, and she starts looking through the documentation of this third-party library. All right, so they're happy. Now, it's been a couple months, so it's time to check back in with the team. It's not really been a couple months. It's not real time, okay? So you decide to have your second one-on-ones, and your first one, again, is Youssef. And Youssef is definitely a lot less stressed than he used to be. That's pretty plain to see, and he actually admits, I'm glad you pressed me on that pipeline issue. You never thought he'd admit to something like that, but he's so much less stressed, and he can actually help the team with their actual planned work, and he's not constantly getting people at his desk, so he doesn't always have his headphones on anymore. So he's happy and is much less stressed out. And then Tom says, I feel like I can finally do my job. You know, the pipeline was fixed. I feel like I'm taking on this mentorship thing with Naomi. I feel like I'm sharing my knowledge and making decisions that make our code base better. So he's really happy. And there's a random asterisk that you can ignore. And then you talk to Naomi. And she says, I really feel like I can develop here, Princess Peach. I felt like before I was a little bit stuck. You know, I've been here for 2 years, but you know, I was thinking maybe I should move on at some point. But now I feel like, you know, I'm learning new stuff. I'm not stagnant anymore, so she's happy. Okay, so all in all, pretty good. Slightly boring, but you know, whatever. So on your way home that night, you reflect on your last couple of months, and there's a few things that you realize. One is that this mentorship dynamic thing has really been paying off. You know, we're investing in our team. People are more content. We're taking people that already have certain domain logic, well, people, Naomi specifically, and we're keeping her, and we're investing in her, and making her more valuable to the company. And at the same time, Tom is also increasingly happy. And then we're also delivering value at a pretty good pace. So that's not just because of the pipeline, but also because of the reduced dependency on development, so they're less distracted in their work all the time. All right. So you reflect on that and you think we should foster this mentorship stuff and keep this going. Unfortunately, when you get to work the next day, Lisa's waiting. So you've recently deployed that loyalty system feature thing. And she says, we got some calls in from a few users that are having trouble enrolling into our loyalty system. This is pretty critical right now, because what's happening is they land on a landing page, and then from there on, depending on some stuff that they've filled out in a form, they get redirected to somewhere, and they end up in that enrolling into that loyalty system. But some of the users, quite a few of them actually, are being redirected, and then there's a dead end. There's like an error page, and she's like, well, this isn't good because obviously these are all new users, and the whole point was to, you know, make a lasting good first impression to retain them, and that's clearly not happening right now. So in the meantime, Yusuf's been debugging, and he's figured out what's happening. And he says, okay, it seems we've misconfigured one of the proxies. So when they redirect, there's like a configuration, a wrong configuration that doesn't redirect them to the right place, and things break. Fortunately, he says, I could just edit the configuration manually on production for now. And you go, wait, is this common practice here? And he says, sure, we all do this. I mean, we're all professionals. We all know what we're doing. We trust each other. You know, he looks at you a little bit like, why wouldn't you trust us? Okay. So you have two options here. Either you don't really want to break that feeling of trust, and you go, you know what, you are a smart bunch of professionals. I trust you as well. Or you say, listen, people make mistakes, no matter how smart they are. So this is going to go through the pipeline like everything else, because the entire system shouldn't be dependent on one developer who may or may not make a mistake. So, you either agree with Yusuf and let him edit something on production manually, or you let it go through the pipeline. Come on, this is your chance. Live a little. Yeah, I was really telling myself the other day, like, okay, I gotta remain neutral, like not influence, but it's so hard. Okay. So let's see. Hey! I'm so proud of you guys. I mean, I'm neutral. So you think, you know what? Youssef is right. He is super smart. So you're a smart bunch of professionals. I trust you as well. So you agree, and the configuration is fixed. Nothing's broken, so all is well. But that night when you go home, it doesn't sit well with you, and you think, this sort of stuff might set an unhealthy precedent. May or may not. So, well, it says that afternoon, but the following afternoon, Lisa returns from a meeting with tech management. She says, so that third-party software, is there an alternative for it? Because as it turns out, it's actually really, really pricey, and it doesn't play nice with our Salesforce integration either, so we're not really getting out of it what we need, as it turns out. So then Naomi goes, let's do some research, see what we come up with. So she turns to her computer and she does some research, she asks around, and a couple hours later she says, all right, so there's a much cheaper alternative that we can use, and that's also a bit more flexible, so we can probably integrate it in such a way that it's a bit more customized to our needs. So Tom says, well, let's get to it then and try to swap it out. And then half an hour later, Naomi says, wow, this has been a breeze. We've swapped out the entire thing. Wow, and I see it's been deployed already, you know it's because the CI pipeline doesn't take hours anymore. So, yeah, that's a shame. So you say, great job, team. Lisa's going to be super stoked about this. See, this is what happens, guys. Okay, so a few days later, Youssef is on vacation when a critical issue occurs, and Lisa comes to you panicking. Okay, so another bunch of entry points for new customers end in a 504 or 500 or whatever. Either way, it is not good because we're having the same issues. I thought it was fixed before, and now we're having the same issues with new users again, and we're losing them. And Naomi walks over looking a little flustered, and she's having difficulty making eye contact with you, and she says, Princess Peach, do you have a minute? So you follow her to a quiet corner. And she plops down in front of you. She says, so the critical, that was me. And she's really embarrassed, clearly. She's still looking down and not making any eye contact. So you say, okay, how did this happen? And she says, well, I needed to change some configuration. And you know where this is going. And you ask her, and you did it straight on prod? And she nods. Now, you can either reassure, make her feel better, and plan a post-mortem when Youssef is back, or you can berate her and you say, listen, I trusted you. I trust all my developers, but you need to earn that trust, and I really expected more from you. Thought you were a professional, Naomi. Jeez. So option 1 is reassure and plan in a post-mortem. Or option 2 is berate her. Okay, now this is getting a little bit mean. Let's see how we're doing on time. All right. Okay. Okay, not gonna lie. Okay, so y'all are mean. That's fine. Again, not judging. So you go, okay, you've really violated the trust that I have in you as a developer, so I'm really disappointed in you. I expected more from you than to just go and fix something on prod. How dare you? Nobody should ever do that. So you say we really have to be able to trust our developers, and you cost us a lot of money today. And she still doesn't make any eye contact, and she seems to kind of shrink away in the chair and become smaller. So you get up and just give her a minute to herself, just to just get over herself. I didn't make this decision. No comments. No comments. So time's almost up. That night you reflect on the past few months. It's been almost half a year, and you were deployed for a half year, so it's almost you're almost done. And there's going to be a board meeting very, very soon that will tell you if you did a good job or not. So you reflect and you start to feel a little bit nervous. You go, have I made a positive enough impact for DevCorp to survive or to grow? All right. So the next day, Naomi asks to have a little chat. She sits down opposite you, and she avoids eye contact again. She's looking real timid. And she says, I just wanted to let you know that I am resigning. Oof, you think, but, obviously you're not all that shocked because you've been a bit of a... And you ask her, what's going on? How did this happen? Why are you leaving? She says, I feel just extremely stressed here. It seems I can't do anything right, and I'm just bad at my job. Maybe development just isn't for me. At first I thought I started to learn new things, and I was really developing, and now I start to kind of venture out of that comfort zone and do everything wrong. So maybe I'm just not very good at this programming thing. And then panic starts to set in on you now as well a little bit. And you have a feeling you may have lost a lot of potential here. And what's worse is that you also lost a lot of knowledge that she had that was kind of invaluable about certain obscure parts of the code base of the product because of all her 2 years of fixing bugs and poking around in it. So you say, and you genuinely mean it, you say, I'm sad to see you go. Aw, no, okay. I heard one aw. Yeah, this is what you wanted. So, a few weeks later, you step into the meeting room with a nice view and the big conference table, and you meet with the board. So today you hear how you've done, if DevCorp has improved or gotten worse, if you're going to still receive funding at all, or if they withdraw funding and basically they have to let everyone go. So Lisa closes the door behind you and she looks nervous. She's all flustered and shiny with sweat, I guess. This is a big moment. So the final verdict. Overall, we're really happy with the improvements you've made, they say. And we're going to look at kind of the final score sheet, and I'll talk you through all the decisions that you've made, basically, and what could have happened if you did it differently. So our throughput is through the roof compared to before. We're shipping features and delivering value at unprecedented speeds. Well, that's a combination of things. It's not only the pipeline, but also the sound architectural decisions that you made. It's the fact that you decided not to hire necessarily when maybe you weren't stable enough to do so yet. There was one other thing. Oh, right. And it's the fact that your developers weren't getting all these impromptu requests from external people, people externally from outside of the team. Words. So they could just focus on their jobs. Now, point 2 is we did lose a junior who didn't really contribute much, so they say I don't really know why that happened, but we've kind of lost faith in hiring juniors. We don't really see why we should do that anymore because she didn't do much, so we're probably only going to hire seniors from now on. Lastly, we're pretty impressed with how you've kept spending to a minimum while improving overall speed and the quality of work. That's obviously the fact that you're faster and you're not losing money, but also the fact that you could swap out that third-party library pretty quickly. So you didn't have that vendor lock-in on that really expensive product. You didn't hire anyone. If Tom didn't mentor and wasn't happy, he would have left, so you would have had recruitment. Thank you. So you would have had a lot of recruitment costs. Oh, and also going back to Naomi, If she would have been happy, you would have given her a raise, and she would have been really great, and she would have been a great mentor later. So, but you don't care, do you? Yeah. So good timing, actually. 5 minutes left. So thank you for playing. Special thanks to my coworker Thijs for telling me about Twine, which is what this was made in. If you're ever wanting to make like a choose your own adventure thing. Werkspot, so my employer, for the use of our Menti license, so you could all vote. My friend Naomi for playing Naomi. I'm going to tell you how mean you were. And my coworkers Sophie, Dan, Anton, and Steven for playing the other characters. And of course, Dutch PHP for inviting me. Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions, but I don't see why there would be. What's that? Yeah, go ahead. What's the worst possible ending that we could have had? So, actually, there is a variable in here called hell that can be set to true when all hell breaks loose. And that's when, let's see, what is it? Right. So you did fix the pipeline. Tom would have left and would not have paired with Naomi, which meant that when there was that critical outage that Youssef was gone for, and Tom was gone because he resigned, she had no idea what to do. Otherwise, if she would have paired before, she would have known what to do and she would have fixed it herself. But if they both would have been gone, then there would have been an outage that she had no idea what to do about, and you would have had to wait until Youssef came back from vacation before everything would get up and running again. And then funding would have been withdrawn, and obviously there's other factors as well, but that's probably the worst scenario that could have happened. Yep. No. If you wouldn't have berated Naomi, then everyone would have been there, and there's even a possibility that you would have ended up with 4 developers. Yep. The fourth hire is my coworker Steven, actually, who is called Mike in this story, and he would have been another senior, who, if the business pressure was really high, wouldn't have really been able to, would have just been an expensive hire who didn't really hit the ground running because nobody had time to onboard him. If Naomi had been developed and had paired and stuff, she would have become kind of an onboarding partner for him, and it would have been a really good hire. Yep.
Why is it so absolutely easy to see what is the right choice, while in real life it is not?
Probably because I wasn't as neutral as I could have been. I think the whole you can choose to let the world burn would have been better said way at the beginning, as opposed to right before a question where it would then be quite evident that one is that option. So that's maybe I could probably influence that a little bit less next time. What's that? Yeah. That's going to be tough, but I've thought about that, but that was a conscious decision to not do that. So, all right, that's it, I think. Thank you.